Policy and enforcement stakeholders rejoice. To find out how the new capabilities in Enforce are going to make life a whole lot easier, tune in today on Tanium Tech Talks. Welcome back, Tanium Tech Talks viewers. Very special day today. We have another Tanium Tech Talk veteran joining us. You've seen him before, you'll see him again. Tim Mintner. Today we're talking about Enforce, but first let's get through some introductions. I am Alex Miller. With me today is my co-host, Jesh Sachs.
Thank you so much, Alex. And Tim, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself for those of us who haven't seen you on the show yet?
Yeah, thanks for having me. My name is Tim Mintner. I'm a product manager here at Tanium. I've been at Tanium for a little over 8 years or so. I've worked on many different products over the years, but one of those is Enforce, and I've been on Enforce since the idea inception of Enforce, and went from the very first release back in the 2020 mid-COVID timeframe is when we released that, all the way up to today. And I was on the show last year talking about new capabilities within Enforce, and so that earned me this, which is the token to say I was a top talker. So this session, I hope will kind of pad my results for this year as well.
We got to get you another one of those. Yes, absolutely. So you've been here since the beginning of Enforce, which means you know where all of the skeletons are buried, where everything's hidden, right? All the bodies are buried. But we're not here to talk about that today. We're here to talk about like the fun new stuff. So I've been hearing you talk about this. I'm really excited for all the content we have to share today. So get us started. Like, tell me what's new. What do we have to be excited about coming down the line in Enforce?
Yeah, honestly, this is like the most exciting release of Enforce that we have done since the very first release. And so, like a lot of this functionality is based on like customer feedback and information like we've gathered from conversation and watching customers work and talking to our internal IT teams and like figuring out what can we do to make this experience a whole lot easier. And so there are like two main things that we're looking to accomplish with this particular release. We are looking to one, make that process a whole lot easier for customers that are coming into Enforce for the first time, or customers that have been using Enforce but haven't like fully realized it. So Enforce always demonstrates like really, really well. So you get on over the customer and you're like, hey, we can do like everything that group policy can do. And you can do all of that from a cloud, and it doesn't require domain connectivity, and you can do it across like any number of systems, no matter where they are in the world. And that demonstrates really well. And then you tell the customers, well, I have to recreate all of my policies from scratch, and you just see the wind go out of their sails. I see that balloon deflate. And so we want to be able to make that a lot easier for customers to onboard, customers to get up and running. And then very similar, the other thing we're really looking to do with this release is make it very easy for customers to remediate findings for CIS benchmarks. That tends to be a very common use case that customers do is they have CIS that says, hey, you have to have all of these configurations set on your endpoints. And so they have to try and figure out like what does that mean? Like I've got the list of findings that has to turn into policies. But what policies do I set? How do I set them? And that's a really painful process for many of our customers. In fact, we had conversations with our own internal IT department here at Tanium. And I asked them, I'm like, hey, when a new CIS policy comes out, how long does it take you to turn that from that CIS benchmark into an actual enforced policy? And the answer was, well, usually it takes us about 3 to 4 weeks, like weeks of time in order to do that. So you multiply that by the number of operating systems you support, the different versions that are out there, all that, and that's a huge amount of effort that customers have to do in order to support CIS. So we want to take that from weeks of time down to seconds of time. And that's what we hope to show you today.
Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic because I'm always saying on the show, right? Like I'm all about efficiency. I want things to improve in that direction always, right? In every facet of life. But one of my favorite things to talk about Tanium development is we're almost always just trying to make things easier and faster and more lean and quicker and more accurate. And it's funny, the very first thing you mentioned about being able to come into Enforce and make it even easier for new customers. Like I've played around with, group policy editor and things like that in my own home labs, things like that. I know how to use Enforce, but if you told me like I had to recreate my like 4 or 5 group policies, even then I'd be like, ugh. So it's really exciting because I know that, and I'm sure you're about to speak about this, but a lot of organizations can have dozens, of hundreds and
Yeah.
hundreds of group policies that are going to be affected by this in a positive way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, their policy has been around since the year 2000, believe it or not. And so you've got 26 years now of group policies that have been created and maintained and lived. And so there are customers that have hundreds, if not thousands, of policies that they need to migrate to another tool set, especially as customers move to more cloud native managed. So if you move from, say, an on-premises Active Directory environment to a cloud-based Entra ID environment, then like you have to figure out how you're going to manage all of those settings and recreate or figure out how you're going to do like those 26 years of policies that you've done in the past.
I love it. So I'm excited to see this. Can you show us a little bit of how we could actually make this happen, bring it into reality?
Yeah. Yeah, let's start with a little bit of the framework. So let's talk a little bit about like the past, and then we'll kind of compare and contrast. So in the past, if I wanted to create a policy within Enforce for something like a CIS, I would have to create like many different policy types. So I would need to create a policy for something called machine administrative templates, a different one for user administrative templates, a different one for security settings, a different one for BitLocker and firewall. And so that would be 5, 6, 7, 8 different policies that you would have to create that would all be targeted towards the same system. And so we wanted to make that process a lot easier to start with. So we will start there. So let me go ahead and do a create policy. And so you can see here, we revamped this quite a bit. So now when I go to create a policy, I have a choice. I can look for Windows, Apple, Linux, and Kubernetes for container or cloud-based policies. But on the Windows side, I can pick and choose like which policies I want to include. And so I'm not just limited to one. So in the past, I could just choose firewall, and firewall would be it. I'd have to create a firewall policy. But now I can do things like, hey, I want this to contain machine administrative templates and user administrative templates and security settings, and I want firewall to be part of that as well. And I can add that in. Now, one of the challenges that a lot of our customers will run into is they're like, there's a lot here. Like, how do I figure out like which type of settings do I need within my environment? And so we've given a really nice search capability up here. So let's say I need to configure something related to remote desktop. So let me just search for remote desktop here, and we come back and say, hey, these 3 types contain remote desktop settings. So I've got 24 settings in this one too, and 9 under user administrative templates. So that's cool. So I'm just going to go ahead and select those and then go ahead and confirm.
Yeah,
And so you
Tim,
can see here, yeah,
just real quick. So, are you telling me so the way I'm looking at this is drastically going to reduce how many Tanium policies are that people have to administer or manage. There isn't going to be, 30 of them that I need to focus on for one type of. Okay. All right, that's what I was getting from this.
yeah, it should like greatly reduce. And like before. there still might be a need to create separate policies based on like organizational standards or how uh, different departments might manage different things. But like that's your choice to make as a customer. Like in the past, you had to have policies just because of the limitations within our product itself. And so we want to remove those limitations. So if you want to consolidate things down to a single policy, you now have that option. You now have that capability.
I love that very much. I'm all about, like you just said, optionality, the choice, right? The ability for me to decide how I want my workflow to go. I very much appreciate that.
And that search capability within there, like I don't have to completely view every single policy to find that one setting I need. I can search by keyword. Oh my gosh, 10 out of 10. All right, what else do you have to show us here?
So you can see here now, I have a policy that contains firewall, machine administrative templates, security settings, and user administrative templates. Let me show you some of the new capabilities that we added inside of each of these. So if I go under machine administrative templates, so I still have like all of the settings. So there are thousands of settings inside of here. I can still search. I can search based on keyword. I can search based on registry value. You can search by any number of factors and find the setting that you are specifically looking for. We also improved like some of the toggles here, like show me like all settings or just show me the settings that I've already set within the policy, or show me the settings that may be in an error state, like something's not quite right, or I need to configure something else. Or show me all the settings where I've added a comment. So it's a new thing. Well, it's a thing that we've had in Enforce since the beginning is like when I add a particular setting, I can add a comment on that. Well, in the past, like those were just kind of lost. You would have to go in and dig through and find those on your own when you're editing the policy. So now I can kind of filter and say, show me all the ones that have comments. We also have a couple different methods of applying policy to an endpoint. And so Enforce has, for quite a while, we will figure out what the best method is to apply policy to an endpoint. And we have two different types. We have something called a configuration service provider and something called a local group policy object, or LGPO or CSP. So for certain devices like servers don't have the ability to provide configuration service providers or CSP. So everything is applied through LGPO. For like a Windows 11 endpoint, those can actually apply CSP. So what we've always done in the past is we will determine the best method of applying the policy to the endpoint based on the type of endpoint it is. And so now you have the ability to say, okay, show me all the settings that are just CSP related, and you can see which ones are going to be set via CSP, or show me everything. And so it's a really nice filter that like customers have asked for. The other thing we've provided inside of here is an area called extra registry settings. And so we provide a lot of templates out of the box. So we provide all of the Windows 11 templates. We provide templates for Google Chrome, for Microsoft Edge. But even with all the templates that we provide, we can't possibly cover like every single possible setting that a customer is going to want to set on an endpoint. And so we've added this area called extra registry settings that allows you to add in your own custom registry values. Now, in the past, like we've had the ability to kind of do this. There was something called a remediation policy, but the trouble with the remediation policy is like something that you set and then it ran once on the endpoint and that was it. Now I could set a recurring job to say I want to do this every once an hour, but like it had no knowledge of changes on the endpoint. It had no way of like fixing it if something changed. So that wasn't there in the past. Now with these extra registry settings, I can put in any registry key value and give it a type and a value name. And then we will continually reevaluate that endpoint to make sure that these registry settings are set. And if they're not, then we're going to update those registry settings. Beauty of this is like it's not tattooed. It means it doesn't stick around if this policy goes away. If this policy goes away, then we will remove that registry setting from that endpoint as well.
I actually really appreciate that because obviously Tanium could always do that via package or something like that. But like you just mentioned, I really like that keyword. It's not tattooed, right? It's more tied to a policy. So that way it doesn't stick around if we move on from that policy at a later date and become one of those, ancient things that just sit there on your endpoints forever and ever and ever.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that we enforce it. So we're going to go back there and check. Maybe it's something someone changes. Well, that's okay. We're going to flip it right back. So,
yep.
Absolutely love that. Now, if you scroll up a bit, I did have a question. So you were mentioning the CSP and LGPO earlier. I saw this check mark at the top of your screen. Tell me about that. What difference does that make when we talk about these?
That's a great question, Josh. So we've always had the ability to apply policies two different ways, which I mentioned earlier, the CSP method and the local group policy object method. The challenge that we ran into and what our customers ran into is when you would run compliance scans, whether that be through Tanium Comply or another tool the customer might have, is that the compliance tools only know about checking one of those methods. So it can only check for LGPO or it can only check for CSP, but not both. And since we pick the best method on the endpoint, what would happen is we would do a great job of actually setting the setting on the endpoint. But when you would run a compliance scan, it would come up and say, nope, you're not compliant. You haven't set the values. And so there would be a finger pointing between the compliance team and the IT operations team, and they would say, "No, look, I've said it." And the compliance team, "No, you haven't." So we wanted to fix that, and so how we're fixing that is through this checkbox. This checkbox says, "I want to apply both ways. I want to apply both CSP and LGPO on the system." And what that does is it sets the same value in both methods so that when you run the compliance scan, we're going to show compliance for that. Now, only one of those will actually take effect and be actually valid, but it's going to be the same value on either one. So your compliance tools know that it's there. Now, we don't have that check by default because when you set things via LGPO, it can cause a hit to your domain controllers. And so what we don't want to do is like needlessly generate extra traffic to your domain controllers. However, like for your most important policies or the things that are compliance related, you probably want to select that checkbox there so that your compliance tools are there. And it makes a big difference. Like internally, we did some testing where we took a stock Windows 11 machine and we built it and we ran a comply scan on it. And it came back, it was like mostly all red on the compliance results, which means it failed a bunch of checks. And then we deployed our new settings that I'll show you in a bit. And then we ran the comply scan again with this checkbox checked. And it was all green, except for a couple of items that just needed to be tweaked inside of there. So it makes a huge difference in your compliance tools.
This is just one of those things that I think is so little, but like you said, we're solving arguments between compliance teams and IT operations teams. We're saving people so many headaches just by being like, do it this way. So,
yep.
Perfect.
So let me show you a couple of other things that we've added under security settings. So under security settings, most of these are largely the same. The new thing that we've added is the ability to manage services. And so this is a key portion of of CIS. And so there's a number of settings that CIS wants you to set to stop certain services from starting on endpoints. So for example, if you go here, you can see all of the default services that Microsoft provides. You can actually add in your own service. So if you have other services you want to manage that isn't in the list, you can do that. But if I want to do something like Xbox, I want to turn off Xbox Live Game Save from my Windows 11 endpoints. I can just set that to disabled here, and then we will enforce that on the endpoint and make that service disabled.
How do I get that in my personal environment? Am I right?
Right.
I was just thinking I need this for my kids' computers. That way we do not auto start Xbox and Steam and Discord, but companies have different issues. We should probably not be auto starting those same things there either. So
Yeah.
All right, so service settings in security, registry settings, all of our policies together in one single policy, so we don't have to create gazillions of different ones. We can consolidate a ton. This is amazing, Tim. What other goodies do you have for us today?
Yeah, so like how do we tie like all of this together? And all of this comes together with the ability to import policies in a quick and efficient manner. So we've expanded the capabilities of this import. So we've had this import button in Enforce for a really long time, but it was quite honestly pretty useless because the only thing that you could import there was like other Enforce policies. So you would have had to export Enforce policies out and then import those in. So we wanted to expand on this capability and to be able to import group policy backups and also CIS benchmarks that are also listed as group policy backups. So CIS, if you have a CIS subscription, they have something called build kits that you can download from their website. And those build kits contain all of the settings you need to remediate your CIS findings. So I am going to drag inside of here the latest version of the Windows 11 CIS build kit and drag that in. And so you can see here, here's the zip file that I pulled in. I just downloaded that directly off the CIS website. And you can see here down at the bottom, you can see all the things that this includes. So it contains BitLocker settings, computer level 1, computer level 2, services level 1, services level 2. And the level 1s and level 2s have to do with the level of security. So level 1 being more of the baseline, level 2 is more advanced. Don't do level 2 and just push it out to all your endpoints. You're going to break all your endpoints if you do that. But you can import these very easily. So I'm just going to select all, select this button, and then click on the import here.
Right, so previously, this is sitting and working, but previously I couldn't have done this. I would have had to look at these policies, interpret them into Tanium language, create individual policies from scratch. Yes?
Absolutely. Yeah, it would have been a really painful process. Like our internal IT department said that like it takes them 4 weeks to do what we just did in like 15 seconds. So
Sold.
yeah. So now that like we've imported this, I can just click on create policy. And now I've got a policy and I've got BitLocker settings, I've got firewall settings, I've got machine administrative templates, security user administrative templates, all configured to match CIS standards. Now you might notice this BitLocker has a little error. We're doing a good job of showing like things that still need to be configured by you. The only thing that needs to be configured inside of here is for you to upload an image for the BitLocker notification. Everything else we're fully taking care of and configuring all of those settings. So let me dig into some of these just to show you like how we're pulling it all together. So you can see all the settings that have been applied as part of this import. So all of these little green check marks are all the things we just imported into the environment. So hundreds and hundreds of settings. You can see here that the CIS benchmarks actually contain extra registry settings. And so we're pulling those in. And you can see that these are settings that we are setting as part of this policy that were part of that import. If I go over to the security settings side, again, all of these security settings were configured and set according to the standards. And then all of these services that CIS recommends that you don't have running on your Windows 11 box were imported and set to disabled. So you can see all of our Xbox services are listed inside of here. So probably not something that you want. And so the beauty of this is like in just a few seconds, I was able to import the latest CIS standards associated with this. I have a fully configured policy. I can then go in and tweak it. Like if there are some things that I don't want, let's just go into something like password policy. So right now, the CIS standard says my password policy is to remember 24 password remember. If my company standard is 48, I can just go ahead and modify that inside of here. And then I've made my own standard, if you will, to match my own company specific roles. So we'll give you the starting point with all of the standards that CIS provides, and then you can tweak it and modify it to your own specific needs.
And we can use the comments more here too, because now they're searchable. So I could change it and say modified from and use some fun best practices. And then later I can see okay, it's coming together. I like it.
Yeah.
And even me, like with the import, we can rename, we can follow a specific naming convention and much more easily keep track of our different enforcements. And I can see how helpful that would be when you're trying to report and things like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, let me show a couple other imports really quick that will show a little bit more of the like general group policy backup. So I've got another one that's a group policy backup that is very specific to the Microsoft security baselines. So this is something that you can download directly from Microsoft that has all of the security baselines that Microsoft recommends that you put on the system. So let me just drag that in. So this is something I literally downloaded from Microsoft Security Baseline.zip. You can see here, it sets a lot of the same things, but there's a few additional things that this sets, like Defender antivirus and credential guard settings. And so I can click on that, import that, and I have got all of those settings inside of here as well. So I can create a policy based on that.
I can't believe how quick that is.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. When I showed this to our internal IT folks, they're like, "I want this now." Because they're in process of like updating their standards. So, and then let me show one other one. So, CIS not only does say operating system level baselines, but they'll do a number of application baselines as well. And one of those that they provide is all of the recommended settings for Google Chrome. So let me just drag and drop in. This is something I downloaded from CIS. All of the Google Chrome settings for their that CIS recommends, and then import that in. And now I've got all of the recommended hardening settings for Google Chrome imported here in just a matter of seconds. So you can see all of the Google Chrome settings that were set.
I love that so much. As someone in the past who has followed like PDF hardening guides to do things like this, I really appreciate that.
Things like this usually make me cry. I'm actually like smiling, like, okay, I can manage this. This is good stuff. I love it. Goodness. So we're really this enforce release giving so much power, like putting so much more oomph behind enforce in ways that like we're making managing your policies easier. We're making that import button so much more functional and useful. Everyone's going to be using it now to bring in our CIS benchmarks. We're solving difficulty and policies. We're resolving difficulties between teams when compliance checks don't match our policies. enforcing registry stuff, enforcing auto runs. What haven't we asked you about? Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you still want to cover here?
Yeah, the other thing here is we're making it a bit easier for you to see like what's in the policy. So before, whenever I would create a policy, if I wanted to actually see what was in that policy, then I would have to go in and edit that policy again. So now we're giving you a little flyout view to show you information on each one of those policies. To say, hey, look, this is actually enforced. This is when that enforcement date was. And here's all of the rules for this particular file. So this one is pretty simple. It just allows remote desktop into these systems. And so we're making a lot of little kind of quality of life functionality within the product to make it a little bit easier to manage.
I absolutely love that too, how and it's such a little thing and it should be expected anyways, but the fact that it follows the same Tanium design language that we're using all over the product, I really like that. It gives, clients, users a little bit of familiarity with something, even if they've never used it before.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really exciting. So I'll do a plug. So ideas.tanium.com is our user voice. It's where we get feedback from customers. And I was really excited that I got a user voice from a customer the other day, asking to be able to preview the settings that were being set in a policy. I'm like, it's there. We did it. We just are shipping it through to customers now.
I know when I was working with a customer who we had like 5 or 6 BitLocker policies, and every time we needed to make a change, they didn't have great naming conventions because they've been through just so many admins, and so we have to go back and edit 5 policies to find the ones we want. It saves you 15 minutes, right? It's a little
Yeah.
thing, so it is amazing.
Tim, I know Josh does too. We love everything you've shown us today. We love time savers and more efficiency and just ease of use. But we always get asked by customers, what's the next thing? What's in the pipe? Who's on deck? What can you give us today?
So there are two really, really big feedback items that customers ask for that we are looking to address. And they have been committed to. I can't give timelines, but they have been committed to. And one is the ability to import custom ADMX templates. And so we ship a lot of templates out of the box. So we ship all of the Windows 11 templates, Google Chrome. But even given that, there are still things that customers want to bring in from third parties to manage third-party applications. Now, with this particular release, we've given you the ability to add in those extra registry settings, which will help quite a bit. But let's say you have an application that has hundreds of those settings. So we don't want you to have to recreate all of those settings manually. So we want to give you the ability to import your own custom ADMXs in order to set those settings. So that is one thing that we're looking to do. The other thing is our longest standing JIRA. It's our bug tracking system. Our longest standing JIRA within Enforce is around the idea of nested policies. And so being able to layer on policies on top of each other and have multiple levels combined into a single set of policy items. That JIRA just had its 10-year anniversary. So it is older than I am in the Tanium world. So it was 2 years before I joined that JIRA was filed. We're looking to address that. And so being able to layer on things like firewall policies or app blocker or other things like Google Chrome extensions. And so we're looking to tackle that problem this year as well.
That is beautiful. I am excited, hopefully, to see these things in the near future and get you back on Tech Talks to show us what this looks like when it's in action. So I love it so much.
Not to mention, Jesh and I also have some of our own exciting news to share. We all know finding the right solution can be tough, so we lean on trusted peers and industry experts to guide us, right? That's why we are thrilled to announce that Tanium has been named a leader in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for endpoint management tools, recognized for both our ability to execute and completeness of vision. And it doesn't stop there. IDC MarketScape also named Tanium a leader in its worldwide client endpoint management software for Windows device management 2025 to 2026 assessment. If you want to dig any deeper in this, grab your complimentary report in the show notes below. Thank you, Tim, so much for joining us today. As always, you are a great Tech Talk guest. And thank you so much for sharing these new enforced capabilities with us. And as always, thank you to the viewers for joining us. We will always appreciate you. We love when you guys reach out and talk to us about what you like, what you want to hear about. Don't forget to like and subscribe to hear the newest Tanium info, and have a wonderful day. We'll see you next time on Tanium Tech Talks.